Hello and welcome. As somebody who has grown up in the 80s and 90s, this morning I had to think about the big hit from Britney Spears, Oops, I Did It Again, because Ukraine did it again. Again, once more, they attacked the Crimean bridge. In this situational picture, we are going to talk about what do we know so far, what are the theories about the means of attacks, and I want to emphasize we are talking about theories, not about the ultimate facts. And we are obviously also talking about what else is going on along the front line, but let's just dive right in. We're starting north of the Seversky Donetsk. Here we have Russian attacks. Riba is claiming that the Russians crossed the Sherebets River here and have gained some grounds here. You can see it on the map here. That should be into the high grounds here, more or less. I have not found any proof of this whatsoever, so it might be true, it might be pure fantasy. They're also talking about attacks in this direction, and they are saying that right now, close to Torsk, they have stopped their offensive operations, but that the Ukrainians themselves are attacking there and try to better the situation there. The interesting part is, though, that we have this here from Voenko, and they are saying that the Russians are trying to reach the Sherebets line to better their positions, probably to shorten the front line, to create an easier to defend front line. They would also push or at least put immense pressure on the Ukrainians south of this region for logistical reasons. And once they reach the Seversky Donetsk, they would threaten Seversk from the north. So overall, it would make sense for the Russians to attack there, especially also in the context of fixing Ukrainian troops. The interesting part is, though, that Voenko is giving us numbers, how much Russian forces, how big the Russian forces are. They are actually claiming that the Russians have 59,122 men in this region. They give us the number to the last person. They claim that 413 tanks they have there, 922 armored fighting vehicles, including IFVs, APCs, armored transports, etc. They mention the MTLB. They say that they have 428 artillery units over 100 millimeters, so disregarding the 80 millimeter mortars, and they have 164 multiple launch rocket systems. Now, the numbers are interesting and impressive, but at the same time, they don't make sense. Why would a pro-Russian source publish this detailed information? There might be some reason, but the most logical reason was that this is an information operation, that they try to force the Ukrainians to attack, to react to those numbers, maybe to send reinforcements, because supposedly the Russian forces are that strong in this region. Because this should be a secret. It's the last thing you want to have published openly, how strong your forces are down to the last person, unless you want to force the opposite side's reaction, either by forcing them, by enticing them to attack, or by forcing them to reinforce. So to me, that smells fishy. If we go further down, we have fighting around Bakhmut, two concentrations. Berchivka fighting is continuing, and Klishivka. We have Riba again claiming that all the Ukrainian attacks at Berchivka were defeated, and they said that their advance from the hills close to Klishivka has been held. The Ukrainians tried to push them in and were not capable of doing so. In the last situation report, I said that Riba claimed that the Russians actually managed to push the Ukrainians somewhat back. This seems to be, this is only them claiming I have not seen any proof of this. I haven't even seen other Russian military bloggers confirming this, and they now claim that they still hold the position. It's at least possible, but I have not seen any image proof so far, neither showing us the control of the Ukrainians, current control of the ridgeline here, nor that the Ukrainians will push back. So we are somewhat in the dark about this. We have a pro-Ukrainian blogger, and he shows us the map here. He shows, according to him, the ridgeline is still contested. It's not under a solid control of either side, but also not of the Ukrainians. And if we look at the road here, according to him, the last secure Ukrainian positions are somewhat west of where the road turns. And if we zoom in here, we have that's more or less what we see here. So it seems like the ridgeline is actually not under solid control by either side as of now, and especially not by the Ukrainian side, because should they take the high ground and should they be able to hold it, that would likely force the Russians to retreat from Klishivka. It seems like this has not been happening yet. The Russians are also reporting 13 more Ukrainian attacks from Kurdyumivka down to Krasnohorivka to Pervomayske and Marinka. I do not see any claims that anything has changed in the possession of on the ground here. By neither side, I don't see image proof, so it seems like those attacks happened but have not achieved anything. We do have change in the control of territory, though, on the border between Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia. South of Velika Novosilka, we have confirmation by the Russian side that the Ukrainians have advanced towards Staromayorsk. They are likely on the high ground here. I'm not sure how far they've reached, but we have the same pro-Ukrainian blogger again talking about fighting already inside of town, and the Russians only have secure positions in the south of Staromayorsk yet. So while we don't really know, no image proof again, while we don't really know how far the Russians are pushed back, we know that the Ukrainians gained some ground on this front line here. They pushed somewhat further south. West of it, close to Orikhiv, we have reports from the Russians, again Riba, claiming that the Ukrainians sent additional reinforcements towards Robotine. We have here, according to them, the 47th Mechanized Brigades was sending reinforcements, so we should expect more attacks of Robotine, but I do not see any change in territory here that can be confirmed. So overall, the Ukrainians, both sides are still fighting, barely any change in possession. The most important part is it seems clear that Klishivka is still in Russian hand and will probably be a little longer, as it seems to be certain that the Ukrainians do not control the ridgeline as of now, which would likely force the Russians to withdraw. So let's go to the big item for today. The bridge was attacked. So what do we know as of now? Let's scroll here. We're talking about this bridge here, and we have a satellite picture showing us the difference. We see the bridge here, and this is the damage on it now. The one or two explosions happened between 3 and 3:20 in the morning, local time. On the bridge, there was a civilian car in which a family was. Supposedly the parents died in the attack, and the teenage daughter, I think it was a girl, is in hospital with heavy injuries. So this is the car you see that was right at the position where the explosions happened. We have some pictures here that I'm going to show you, showing us the damages. The indications are, and there seems to be a consensus, I think is the word, like everyone is agreeing, let's just use a different word, that the attack happened from below the bridge. We see scorching here, we see blackness, we see that the structure has turned black, which would indicate that the explosion actually happened below it. Here you can see the damage. One part collapsed and the other part kind of moved. So it seems that the damage is fairly serious, and that also we see the guardrails, that they are not being pushed in. All of this indicates that the damage was from below the bridge, that on the pillar something exploded here. Here we see the car again that somebody has died in. The big information is, though, that the railroad bridge is not damaged. We see a video taken from one of the trains here, and here we see another example of the damages here. This is interesting because if there is any point in this war where a single attack can decide the war, can decide the outcome, then it would be a destruction of the railroad bridge. Anything that even comes, I don't see any potential target for the Ukrainians that would even come close in its impact on the war. As we've talked a lot of times, how much the Russian armed forces are dependent on railroad traffic for their logistics. This way here, it would force the Russians to either switch to ferries or to unload on their own territory before they reach occupied Crimea, which would mean that the traffic is the volume of supply they can push over to the southern front line would be vastly diminished, and that would be an immense advantage for the Ukrainians for their task to recapture, to liberate southern Kherson, Zaporizhia, and finally Crimea. So if the Ukrainians have a choice, they should focus on the railroad bridge, but it wasn't attacked. We see this just to give a confirmation in this regard. We have Google Maps here, and you can clearly see the railroad bridge is in the south, is southern western part of it, which would indicate that the attack came from the northeast and not from the southwest. Now, what did it? We have several theories. I talked to a Swiss specialist about fortifications and the Swiss defensive systems, and he gave me the information he got from a Swiss specialist for explosives and for destruction, and according to them, it was placed explosives on the pillars and on the higher upper pillars. He mentioned that it would likely be something like this, V-shaped charges that the Swiss were using, something like this, that has been placed under the bridge to lift it in a way. They were guessing it's probably 5 pieces of 20 kilos, which would be big enough for special forces to lift it, to place it there. And at the same time, it would explain why it's the flat part of the bridge, because you have to climb up and place it there. And that would obviously be not possible on the part where the ships cross through, because if you have a choice, you would destroy the bridge there where the ships cross through, because the damage would be much more impactful there and repair would be much more difficult. So according to this, the damage indicates that it might have been special forces. We have someone here too. I don't know this guy, but we have somebody who claims to be, and I don't know him, so he claims to be a veteran of the United States Air Force and a retired engineer. So in theory, he should know what he's talking about. And he's saying that he's also saying that it was explosives under the bridge. The theory would be that they might have come with one of the jet skis. Jet skis shouldn't have the range, but you could obviously get a drone somewhere in the ocean to refuel. You could bring in jerry cans to refuel. You can have various theories how the range could still have been possible. But the big issue for me is, why did they attack the rail bridge, not attack the rail bridge? Any theory that they might have tried to attack both and maybe the explosives on the railroad bridge didn't work or something, don't convince me, because if you have a choice to take out the rail bridge, you focus on it. And the more explosives you position there, the better, the longer the repair takes. So rather than trying to take out both with one set of explosives, you would focus everything on the railroad bridge to destroy it on such a scale that the repair would take even longer, and to make sure that it blows up even if some of the explosives fail. So this doesn't really convince me. The next theory would be Rim 2. S-200 or ATACMS. There are some claiming that ATACMS is in Ukraine for months already. I don't see any proof of this. I think that's fantasy. But if we take a ballistic missile of one of the 3 kinds, we should see the damage on top of the bridge, whereas everyone agrees, who at least knows something, that supposedly the damage came from below. I think I said it already. If not, just let me emphasize it again. I'm not an explosive specialist and I'm not an engineer, so I'm talking about what others say. I can't really say much about the structural or explosive part. I can only talk to you about the military implications. This is more my expertise than the bridge and blowing up the bridge itself. So when we say special forces seem unlikely, because the target would be different, and ballistic missiles are almost impossible, then an obvious choice would be Storm Shadow. If the attack came from the north, that would be the right direction they should Storm Shadows. Now we have an argument against it. So far, we have not seen a single attack with Storm Shadows on the Crimean Peninsula. At least I do not find any proof of this. This seems to indicate that the British said you can use them, but not on Crimea. But that can be intended. Maskirovka is being used for the Russian masquerade, to lead opponents in the wrong direction. I mean, the Ukrainians are capable of that as well. And if you plan to strike the Crimean Bridge with Storm Shadow, there's no better way than to make the Russians believe that it's impossible that this will happen because they are not allowed to. So deliberately not attacking Crimea to make sure the Russians believe Crimean Bridge will never be attacked by it would be a good choice. In the past, I told you that according to reports, a warship has been moved into the Azov Sea. I identified as a Russian corvette, which a modern one with modern radar systems, where I thought, as it came directly after Storm Shadows were confirmed, that it's likely going to be placed there to help identify incoming Storm Shadows, as their stealth is optimized to the front but not to the side. So all you would have to do is place like a corvette here, and it would easily, or much more easy, be able to identify incoming threats, incoming stealth cruise missiles. Now, if the Russians believe that Storm Shadows will not come, they can withdraw that boat. They might be able to withdraw air defense systems that are specifically optimized for Storm Shadows in regards to that, so that would make sense. But the point is, if the Ukrainians did this, if they prepared it with an information campaign over weeks or even months, wouldn't they do the attack more serious? We have 1 to 2 detonations. That would be one Sukhoi 24 that might have launched the 2 Storm Shadows it can carry. Shouldn't they use most of them? Shouldn't they have a swarm to at least use the element of surprise to maximize the damage? That is, to me, a very good argument against it, that it was Storm Shadow. So I don't think it was Storm Shadow either. That leaves naval drones. That's what the Russians are saying. They are also saying that yesterday's attack on Crimea, that was done, a massive attack with drones, both with naval drones as well as with aerial drones, was probably in preparation for this and to create a distraction in this regard. We have claims here that Riba is saying that it probably came from the Sea of Azov, the attack by the Ukrainians, and they are saying that from the Azov Sea, which is completely surrounded by Russian-controlled territory, still naval drones came from there. This is obviously a massive embarrassment that they can't even control it, but they even have an explanation for this. They say that on the Danube, the Ukrainian side trained how to release drones from boats. And they think it might have been possible that the Ukrainian side used a chartered boat, a chartered ship, to drive under it and launch it from there. And that would in itself make sense, as we know that Ukraine was using naval drones in the area, I think up to Sochi. So the Russians were knowing that naval drones are in the Black Sea and that they have the range that they could theoretically attack the Crimean Bridge. So you would imagine that they focus their defense against naval drones towards the south, because the Crimean Bridge is an obvious target. They would focus their defense on the south. You do not defend against a naval attack from the north when you control the whole sea. Where should it come from? So this would explain that if the Ukrainians have to do it, they understand it's impossible to do it from the south. Maybe they have torpedo nets. Maybe they have their sensors, their defenses set up. So they try it from the north, and then obviously a chartered ship cannot transport an unlimited amount of naval drones and set them all into the water without being caught. So that would limit the amount of drones, which would in total explain it. This would also explain why the road bridge was attacked and not the railroad bridge, as it would be the first target it hits. Right now, tourists on the Crimean Peninsula are panicking and trying to get away. They are currently blocking the roads, as we can see here. The ferry service had been stopped in the meantime, but now it has resumed, and the occupation governor said they should use the road system, so basically the land bridge, to withdraw. That will clog the roads for military supply runs as well, so that's a military benefit for Ukraine. It's also obviously a benefit that the Russians will have to transport all or almost all over the railroad bridge. I'm not completely... We do not know yet whether they will be able to resume traffic on at least one lane, but this will take out at least partially the road bridge for quite some time again. So they have a clear benefit. But if we talk about, so to just make a summary, what was it and what is the overall benefit? The big Question is, why did they attack the road bridge and not the railroad bridge if this is the one point where that might be able to win them the war? The only logical explanation is that the attack came from the north, because if we take the special forces, they would have attacked the railroad bridge. There's no chance of it giving a reasonable explanation, in my mind at least, why they should ignore the railroad bridge, or why they should not make absolutely sure that the railroad bridge is taken out if they have a choice. The Storm Shadows, if they were using them, while Storm Shadows might be able to do the damage they did, Ukrainian side should have used a lot more Storm Shadows in this regard. If they have the elements of surprise for once, they should make sure that at least they strike home. So this speaks against both special forces and against Storm Shadows. Ballistic missiles, we already said that the damage supposedly doesn't support this, and we see this more or less indicates towards naval drones, as the Russians are saying themselves, because the only way for them with a naval drone coming from the Azov Sea, the only way to ignore the railroad bridge would be a technical malfunction. Other than that, it doesn't make sense why they wouldn't have attacked the railroad bridge here. So to summarize, it will have an effect. It will be a positive effect for the Ukrainians. The panic now by civilians will clog the roads, but the effect will be much lower than in comparison to a strike on the railroad bridge. And all of this points, to me at least, clearly to a naval drone coming from the Azov Sea. How the Ukrainians managed to set that up will be interesting, but it seems that they might have used a civilian ship that they were able to charter to use for that purpose. That's it already from me for now. If you found this interesting, please hit the thumbs up button. Leave a comment if you think I forgot something. If you if you can add something to enlighten all of us. Not only can this add additional useful information, but it really helps with the algorithm as well. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support from viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.